We did this. Imina nili mili. Yeah, okay, all right, so let's review, right? So Hillel, Haya, Omer. Hillel would say, Imina nili mili. If not for me, right? If I'm not for myself, then who is for me? Ukishani latmi. And if I am for myself, mani. What am I? Not now when. What? Oh, yes, I forgot to correct that. Okay, so then we asked a bunch of questions. What is he talking about? No context. What is each question asking? What is the hava amina for each question? Meaning, what would you have thought if he didn't say this? Like, why is it even necessary to ask a question? Why isn't it obvious? What's the relationship between the three questions? What practical relevance or implication does this have? Like, what are we supposed to do now that we know this? Like, it's not clear. Like, Mili. Okay, great. Like, what's that supposed to do? Who's the audience of the Mishnah? And we noted that, or did I say this? No. Is this for Hasidim, or is this like for everyone, or is it for everyone in different ways? And then when I say Hasidim, I mean people who are going to be Hasidim. And then why does it say im for the first and third clauses, but kishe for the second one? Does that matter, or is it just like a poetic thing? All right, then we did the Ovadim Bartenura, and we just read it. We didn't explain it yet. Okay, so he said, if I don't get zchus, which we're loosely translating for now as merit. Yeah, okay, right? So if I don't get zchus for myself, who can obtain zchus on my behalf? And when I am for myself, even if I do obtain zchus for myself, mahu hazchus hazeh. What is the zchus? What is it worth compared to what I have to do, what I'm obligated to do? And if not now, but when? Because then you can't get any other zchus when you're dead. Yeah, only in this world. Okay. So here, what do we ask? This is like what we ended off on.
You said Hillel is like a person who's on a high level or obligation.
I don't think we asked that. That's an interesting question. Let me just think about that for 1 second. What do you mean? Why would he be upset?
Like the whole thing where he says, "What is it worth in relation to what I'm obligated to?"
Yeah.
Why is he doing this? Kind of like reluctant, a little bit reluctant.
Yeah, he should be. I think we would expect him to be excited about.
So I don't think this implies that he's not excited, right? This is just saying that like whatever zchus I have, there's so much I'm obligated to do. So like, what is that zchus?
We ask like, what is this like the other words like the or the
yeah. So I think the main question we asked here is like, this is all basic stuff. Like obviously no one can do mitzvahs for you. Obviously like you can't get zchus after death. Obviously like you have a lot that you're obligated to do, So what someone like Hillel especially, then like, doesn't he know this already? And did we ask anything else? I can't remember.
I mean, I don't know if this is a question or not, but like, is it like the mitzvah, like, the ha'am way where it's like...
right. Yeah, we did raise that possibility because we just done the Avos ben Rambam that there's the derech ha'am, which is referring to halacha that everyone's obligated in. And then there's derech ha'yachid, which is taking... Anyone want to define derech ha'yachid again?
The purpose of the mitzvah and trying to achieve that.
Yeah, trying to achieve the purpose of the mitzvah through the mitzvah. So we said, is this talking in the framework of derech ha'am or derech ha'yachid? What argument can you bring either way?
Because he's like, I think for the regular one, we said like, what is it worth in related to what I'm obligated to? Like a person who is on a high level. Why do I keep bringing up this point? Okay, never mind.
You don't have to remember. You can think about it fresh. Meaning, what would lead you to believe that this is talking about just straight halacha, and what would lead you to believe?
What I'm obligated to do.
Yeah, obligated to do sounds like what?
Straight halacha.
Straight halacha, right? Is obligations are like what you have to do halachically, not derech ha'yachid, But then what argument do we come up with that this might be talking about derech ha'yachid?
Because it's making it sound so hard, and like the derech ha'yachid. The derech ha'am stuff. It's not like that.
This is making it sound like there's like an infinite amount of like, that you can do. And that sounds like much more of a description of the derech ha'yachid because you could conceivably keep all of halacha. Like it's not like a terribly hard thing to do. And in fact, just to add one thing here, according to this interpretation, does this sound like it's talking about, let's assume if this was talking about halacha, is it talking about all halacha or a category within halacha? And if a category, what category? And I'll give you the hints in terms of the words to use. Zechus and chayav la'asos. Okay, definitely in the Torah, right? But I think something narrower than that.
Mido.
That I don't think, because then it wouldn't really talk about obligation, right?
No, but obligation in the sense that you're not obligated.
But he's talking about what he is obligated in, right? He's saying like, I've gotten this much zechus, but I have so much I'm obligated to do.
I think he's talking about is not. Oh, I guess you could interpret it.
I think just plain shot is that he's saying that I have so much that I'm obligated to do. Then what is my zechus? What kinds of things in Torah are you obligated to do?
Oh, offset?
Mitzvos aseh, right? So it's not even, doesn't even sound like this is talking about mitzvos los aseh, right? Because he's saying I'm obligated to do it, and zechus is for mitzvos aseh. What do you associate with mitzvos los aseh? Punishment, right? He's not even talking about punishment here, right? So it even sounds like this is talking about, like, so if you think about that, when we think about when I ask you like what's hard about keeping halacha, like in general, it's really the los asehs, right? It's like, that's what we have a hard time. It's really, and yeah, there are certain tefillah, there's certain mitzvahs say that are hard to do, like tefillah. It's hard to like, really do a good tefillah or whatever. But like, it's not like an impossible task, but he's talking about it as like an impossible task,
But if you don't get for following the low.
No, you don't get, you get not punishment, I another like this. I don't think we use the term zechus for keeping los asehs, because it's really you're preventing yourself from being harmed in your body or your soul by doing averos, So I just don't think we use the term zechus. We use the term like avon or onesh. Okay, so that's where we ended off. So anyone want to try to interpret what this is saying, either the whole thing or any part of it?
Based on this explanation?
Yeah, based on Uvadi being Bartenura, yeah. Yeah, we're going to do another one if we have time, which we probably should. Should we like take it bit by bit? Like, let's take the first clause, the first statement here. Okay, if I do not obtain zechus for myself, who obtains zechus on my behalf? And again, the obvious problem with that is, like no one can do mitzvahs for you. Only you can do mitzvahs for yourself. So like, what was he thinking? Or maybe if you want to think about the whole thing, you can. I don't know. I want to force you to start one place.
When I heard this before, I never thought of it in the sense of mitzvah.
Yeah, what did you think of it in terms of? Because maybe that would be another interpretation.
Thought, action.
Yeah. So after this is I put the Rambam on there, and the Rambam says it's about free will in general. Okay, which is like a much broader thing. Yeah, I also never thought about this in terms of mitzvahs.
I thought about it in terms of opportunity.
Okay.
If you don't steal opportunity, then who is? No one.
Yeah. So that definitely fits into the last clause, right? Is that you have limited opportunity because it's only during this world, and if not now, when? Seems to be like a suggestion about opportunity. Yeah.
Also, everyone has different, you're only getting this opportunity. It's not like everyone could do it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good. That's another aspect of opportunity, right? Is that it's only for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's focus on the question that I think is the hardest, which is, how could you think that other people could be zocheh for you? Is there a rational or a plausible way where you might think or feel that even if I don't do mitzvahs, then somehow I'm going to get zechus from someone else? Yeah, that's the weird thing also, right? Yeah, so let's broaden it and think maybe not confine ourselves by a chassid and think about for all people, and then maybe we'll zero in on the chassid afterwards.
For a regular person, they could just think, I'm surrounded by someone or a tzaddik, and they can obtain it.
Okay. So I think what you started to say is more plausible than for it. See, I know there's I think there are certain communities in which they think that the tzaddik will get all this clues for me, but I don't really think that's the average person. But what do you start to say about the yeah. So talk out the feeling that a person might say. How might that affect their decisions?
Kind of the safety net. No matter what I do, their chachma overrides my stupidity.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So I think what Leah's pointing out, that's the only answer I came up with, which is that there is there's personal zechuyos, your own merits, right? But there is such a thing as a community that has zechus. Okay, a present day community, let's say like what Leah is saying, if you surround yourself with chachamim, or what zechus do we talk about that we all have based on the community that we're in? Zechus Avos, right? The fact that we are all the descendants of the Avos, you know? So I think what this is talking about, I think the Havamina here is like an emotional Havamina, is that you might feel like, okay, like I don't need to strive as hard in my own avodas Hashem because I'm with the right people, you know, I'm in the right community, and like I can somehow their zechus will benefit me. So it's like, it's not all upon me, you know? I'll give you a mashal of this that one of my friends came up with is, it's kind of like if you, I don't know how many of you did this. I was on the other side, but in high school, if you have a group project, you know, like there's some people who just kind of like slack off and like let all of the people who know how to do the work. And you're like, oh, like I can just, you know, I'll just ride their momentum, you know, and like be zoche with them. So that's, I think, the feeling that this is talking about is that I might not have a lot of zechus, but I can rely on the zechus of the community. Now, what is the refutation of that? Like, and he's saying, if I do not obtain zechus for myself, who obtains zechus on my half? So how would you like explain what's wrong with that? Because again, it is true that like it's good to be in a community that you surround yourself with good people. So like what is the refutation here?
Community.
Like if you like leave the community, if you're not, if like one day you're just not surrounded by those people anymore, then what's gonna happen to you?
Okay, that's definitely true, right? Is if you are propping yourself up with the community, then you're only as good as the community is, and if they change or you go, then yeah. I think there's a more intrinsic problem though.
I was gonna say that like individuals like you make up the community, so if everyone has that mentality.
Oh, that's not a good argument. Okay, that's true.
It doesn't sound like the person talking about community where they're he's like one of
No, I think it's the opposite, right? Isn't it talking about a case where you are relying on like the zechus of the people around you? So like they are.
He's in a community where he can't.
Yeah.
What was the question again?
The question is how would you? What argument is Hillel making against this line of reasoning? Right, this person saying I can just rely on the zechus of the people around me, and Hillel saying if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I don't obtain zechus for myself, who will obtain zechus on my half? So he's arguing against it. What is his argument against it?
He's saying like if you want it, then you have to do it, and if you're not trying to do it, then it's showing that you don't want it, and like.
Okay, good. Let me ask you one step. I think just to build a bridge here is like, how does the zechus of the people around you help you? By affecting you.
Not necessarily yours.
What do you mean?
Like it affects who you are now, but it doesn't affect how you're like relating to God. Your actual.
Okay, I think that's saying the same thing, but let me talk it out, and then you tell me if you're saying something different here. Okay. Is like this, is the illusion is I could just rely on the zechus of the people around me, okay? But in reality, the zechus of the people around you has absolutely no significance unless it actually affects you and your decisions. So like having good people around you is helpful, but at the end of the day, what's the only way for you to get zechus? Is by changing yourself, you know? So like, let's say, for example, this is a problem that like a lot of people have when they go to yeshiva or seminary, okay? Is they'll go to a seminary or yeshiva and they'll have this intent of like, well, if I put myself in the right environment, then I'll become stronger in my avodas Hashem, or I'll learn more or whatever. And it's true that environmental cues do help you, but then they go there and then they pat themselves on the back because like, okay, now I'm in a seminary or yeshiva, and then they just kick back, you know? Well, it's great that you're there, but like if you don't actually learn, then you're not going to do anything, you know? So in other words, the mistake is to think that the zechus of the people around you actually like automatically impacts you, when really all it does is it helps your environment, but you have to actually get the zechus on your own. Does that make sense? So I don't know if that's what you were saying, Leah, in terms of like let's say you were in a great family. Let's say you're Yitzchak and you're in Avraham Avinu's family, right? So you're definitely in a better environment because you got Avraham and Sarah for parents. But is that going to automatically give you a relationship with Hashem? No, you actually have to then learn from Avraham, or like follow in his ways, or do tzedakah and mishpat. You know, it doesn't automatically like affect you unless you take action. So ultimately, it boils down to you yourself.
Like everyone's put in different situations which are like more helpful or not helpful, more conducive or not conducive.
Conducive is a good word. Yeah.
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 So like becoming aware, but like ultimately.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's the only way I can make sense of this first statement here, because I don't think the person thinks you can actually like, it's not like a bank account where like I could just transfer money to you. I don't think he thinks that like if I like find the right tzaddik, then they'll just like hook me up with zechuyos. I think it's just like if I'm near around the right people or I affiliate with the right people, then that'll somehow automatically benefit me or perfect me. But no, you still have to do the work. It's just that being in that relationship or community helps make it more conducive for you to do this, or it makes it easier to do this. Yeah, okay. What about this one? Vafilu zachisi la'asmi, mahu hazechus hazeh. Even if I do obtain zechus for myself, what is this zechus? And then what is it worth in relation to what I'm obligated to do? So what's the line of thinking that this is coming to refute, and how does it refute it?
Well, in that situation where you're surrounded by great people and everything, like, yeah, they'll rub off on you a little bit, and yeah, like I'll learn from them a little bit, but ultimately, like I'm still feeding off of them. Like it's not, what I gain is not really anything in relation to what they like, actually have.
Okay, you could say that that the ma keneged ma ani shani chayv lasos is still talking about the comparative framework, and I think that does fit into the Mishnah very well. I kind of took this as its own thing. Let's just take the statement for the first half of the statement here. If I am zocha for myself, what is this zechus? So what's that question? What is this zechus?
In what way will I be benefiting from my
Okay, so the person who's saying this, the person who this is talking to thinks that the zechus is worth a lot. And Hillel is telling him, what is the zechus? Especially compared to what you have to do. So what is this person thinking, and like how is Hillel refuting it? This is a tough one.
In my brain, I'm like thinking that this guy, if he like does it for himself, he's like going beyond the whatever law.
Oh yeah, you're going with the Derech Yachid thing?
So then not in like that's just how I think. So if he's saying like if I actually do the obligation, then I get so close. But is there more if like I do it?
Yeah. So that the first time I learned this, that's how we took it also, and that's kind of why I decided to teach Avram ben Rambam first. And then over the weekend, or really yesterday was the weekend. Yesterday I came up with another interpretation that can fit it even into basic halacha. So I think that's a good approach. Is that in other words, what Ayala is saying is in terms of the Derech Yachid, like it is like infinite, or there's like much more that you can do, and like you can't just like get satisfied with how much of it you've done, because there's so much more to do. Is that what you're saying, or is that different?
I don't know, maybe he's saying like to the guy, like, oh, what's this? Like this guy is saying to her like, oh, this is so good, but like, does he even know what it is?
Okay, so I think that's the point, is you take it literally. What is the zechus? Okay, and do you know what the zechus is of any mitzvah? No. Okay, and in fact, I think we went over this when we were talking about how God judges us earlier in the year. I think we had a discussion about that. I don't remember if we read this or if we just talked about it, but the Rambam in Hilchos Tשוba Perek Gimel talks about how everyone has zechuyos and avonos, has like merits and demerits, and then the community has it and the world has it, and they're weighed on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, right? And if the whatever, so in there the Rambam says shikol zeh, this weighing of the zechuyos and avonos, eno lefi minyan hazechuyos and avonos. It's not based on the number, ela lefi godlan, but according to their degree or their magnitude, like how big they are. Yesh zechus shehi kneged kama avonos. You can have one merit that's equal to many demerits or many avonos. And then it quotes an example, Yan nimsa bodavar tov. V'yesh avon shu kneged kama zechuyos. You can have one avon that is corresponding to a lot of zechuyos. V'chote echad ya'abed tov harbe. One sinner can destroy a lot of good. And here's the key point. V'ein shoklin ela b'da'ato shel kel deos. This weighing is only done in the mind of the God of minds, okay, which is Hashem. Okay, that's a rare name for Hashem. I think it only appears in one place, two places. V'hu hayodeh heach orchin hazechuyos kneged avonos. He's the only one who knows how to weigh the zechuyos against the avonos. Okay, so God is the only one who can know how much your mitzvos are worth and what your zechus is. Now let's go back to this here.
And also, would it be like worth more if like your intention is to do the mitzvah, not
right? So that's an example, right? It's like you could have two people who do the same mitzvah, one person who does it with proper intention or with intention, and the other person who doesn't. And it could be that the person who does it with intention gets way. It could be, let's say, like one person gives tzedakah with proper intention, and the other person gives $1 million, just like whatever, Could be that the one with the good intention gets a lot more zechus out of it. Yeah. So let's just go back to the rhetorical situation here. What is the audience of this Mishnah thinking to himself, and how is Hillel refuting that?
I'm gonna get.
I've got so much zechuyos already, right? Because this is in the past, right? In other words, these are reasons why. Like, I should say this. I'm learning this as like the subject of this Mishnah is like excuses you make for yourself that prevent you from striving in your avodas Hashem for more zechus. So the first excuse is I can kick back and rely on my community. Okay, and he says no. Even if you have a good community, at the end of the day, it's all up to what you do with it. Second thing is, I have a lot of zechus. And what's his response to that?
You don't know.
You have no idea how much zechus you have. Okay. And I'll give you an analogy here. So I was looking up, trying to look up a factual analogy. So anyone know, I'd be impressed if anyone knows this. Anyone know what currency they use in Iran? Okay. So it's called the rial. Okay. So if I told you, okay, I'm going to give you a million rial, okay?
You don't know how much you have.
Exactly, right? So if you didn't know the exchange rate,
You think you have a lot.
you might think you have a lot. So I looked it up in 2020. I don't know when in 2020. It says that the rial, 42,000 rial equals $1. So you can have like.
Why things don't work out?
Exactly, right. So it's it's because of there's so many sanctions on Iran. So like the value went way down. So like it's the thing. Like if someone said, "Oh, I have so much zechus," well, what's the only way you know how much zechus is if you know the exchange rate, if you know how it's weighed. You have no idea how much zechus you have. Maybe you really don't have a lot of zechus. And furthermore, so I think that's the first part of this. And furthermore, what is this reputation? What is it worth in relation to what I'm obligated to do? What point do you think is making there, given this first point?
You're obligated to do so many things. So if you think that this one specific mitzvah that you're doing is going to give you so much merit, you're obviously your line of reasoning is faulty because there's other things that you're obligated to do, and you get so much more.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So one way to take it is you can still get a lot more zechus. It's kind of like if a person is interested in making money. I mean, okay, this is a bad example. Never mind. Is it a bad example?
No, you could say. I feel like.
Let's say a person like wants to be like really rich. Okay, right? And if they see an opportunity to make money, and they're like, oh no, man, I'm good. Like in their framework, and that's really not.
I feel like this is more like a person who wants money, and then they get $500, and they're like, all right, that's good. Yeah,
right. Yeah, as in it was there is so much more you can do. Yeah, I had a slightly different take on it. Anyone have a different take on this? I think that's good though. So here's the thing is, let's say you have a lot of zechus, okay? Does that have any impact on what you're obligated to do? Not at all. Say Moshe Rabbeinu, most zechus ever, okay? Does that mean that he changes the way he goes about fulfilling his obligations? No. So he's pointing out, it's irrational. You are obligated to do mitzvahs because God commanded you to. And you get zechus out of it. So it's not even like it's a bad deal for you, So the fact that, let's say you have very little zechus or you have a lot of zechus, that has no bearing on what you're obligated to do. You are obligated to do this no matter what, So the feeling of I have so much zechus, therefore I can slack off on my obligations, that's just irrational. Maybe for money making that works. If you have enough money, then you don't need to work because the reason you work is to get money. Here, it's an obligation. So the fact that I have a lot of zechus does not mean that I should slack off in keeping mitzvos because it shouldn't affect my obligations. Does that make sense? Okay.
It does make sense, but not in Derech HaYachid.
Not in Derech HaYachid, right? Yeah, because there, you would think someone who's interested in the Derech HaYachid is not even going to have this problem. I don't think, right? Because he's going to see that.
Or they will because they know that they have so much.
Okay, here's the one way that you can say that it works in Derech HaYachid. What is the idea of zechus? Remember, it's not just like points in your bank account, but like what is the real idea of zechus? I feel like we did talk about this earlier in the year.
In order to help you improve, like learn or grow.
Yeah, zechus means a perfection of either your character or your soul, which helps you in olam hazeh and helps you in olam haba because it affects the state of your soul. Okay, so what might the Derech HaYachid person be prone to in thinking that they have a zechus and that somehow exempts them from going forward? Like what trap that might they fall into that the average Jew would not fall into?
I'm already perfected.
Yeah, is I think that you could think that you're already perfected in a certain area and therefore you don't need to do the mitzvos. And who famously fell into this trap? Shlomo Melch, right? Is that is that he said, well, the purpose, and now that was for los ases, right? But that the purpose of these mitzvos for kings is to achieve certain results, and I've already achieved it. I don't need this, or I don't need the safeguard, and then boom, then he got gotten. Okay. Yeah. Now this last one I think is the easiest one, which I think Ayala pretty much already said. If not now, when? So what's the havamia that could lead you to slack off here?
I'll do tomorrow.
Yeah, is that there's more time, right? But the reality,
This is like you should always view yourself as if this is
yeah, this is the I think the standard idea of like the remembering death. Say it again.
There's also another like quotation I don't consider them most familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, there's several of them here that emphasize the fact that like you have a limited amount of time and the window is constantly closing and you don't know when it's going to be closed, Yeah, so just to summarize it here, according to this approach, is that the subject of the Mishnah, according to this, is 3 rationalizations that people try to use or are tempted to use to not pursue, to not do avodas Hashem or not pursue asiyas mitzvos. One is my community or the people who I associate with will be zoche for me. And the response to that is, yeah, they're going to help you. It's going to be easier for you to do better decisions, but at the end of the day, you have to do it. If you don't act like Avram Avinu, then Zuchus Avram does nothing for you. If you don't pursue more chachma because you're in seminary or yeshiva, then you're not going to gain more chachma, So the environment is only a means, not an end. 2, is if you might be tempted to slack off by saying, I already have zuchus, therefore I can like slack off on doing extra mitzvos. And the refutation of that is twofold. Number one, you have no idea how much zuchus you have because the only one who can weigh this zuchus is God. Number 2, even if you do have a lot of zuchus, that doesn't change your obligations. You still have an obligation to do this, Number 3 is I got time. Well, first of all, time is limited. It's getting less and less, and it's the only shot you have. You can't just like put in another coin and go again, Yeah. Okay, so that's Ovadim and Bartenura. All right, ready for next interpretation? Okay, let's do this really quickly. I think I want to finish this up and start something new next time. We did this already. So Rambam says like this. Oopsies. I'm pressing the wrong button. That's why. Amar im lo eye ani ba'atmi. If I myself will not be ha'ma'order es nafshi lama'ala. Order to awake, yeah, to motivate myself towards ma'ala here means towards a virtue, which means like a good quality. And by the way, in Rambam, Pirkei Avos lingo, virtue is both for midos and for your mind. So it could be like intellect or it could be for character. Mi ya'ira, who's going to motivate me? She'en li ma'oren michutz. There's no motivator, external motivator, good, right? Kamosh b'yarnu b'pirak hasheni. Because when someone motivates you, what's actually going on? Yeah, and you're really motivating yourself. Like I can't actually motivate you. I can just like present reasons that like, cause you to change your mind about stuff and then you'll do it on your own. But ultimately it's in your mind. The achar, yeah, that's the what anyone know the English proverb about the horse and water? You could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, same thing with motivation, right? It's like you can put someone in the proper situation where like it makes sense to do something, but ultimately like it's up to them. And since it is in my power to incline my soul to whichever side I want, meaning since I can change myself however I want through my decisions, what action have I done out of the good actions? Meaning, what have I done? Okay, like what good actions have I done before? It's as if he is diminishing himself, saying, what am I? In other words, what has come from me since I'm not perfect, even though I've done this.
It's like 2 very different things in the beginning and end.
Yes, yeah. First one is saying, I got to motivate myself because no one's going to do it for me. But then when I do motivate myself, if I have motivated myself, what have I actually accomplished in terms of perfecting myself? Okay, good. So we'll have to put it together. And then let's look at the last one. And afterwards, he goes back and says, if I don't acquire virtues now, What's a bakar?
Clothes?
Chosen.
This is a different word of bakar.
Bakar, like
Yeah, bakar.
Yeah.
Youth, good. In the days of my youth, masai ekne osan. When will I, was it? Acquire them. Okay, good. Bimei hazikna, in the days of old age? Lo. No. Kikasha hu lasur, because it's difficult to deviate mihatchunus be'esahi from characteristics at that time. Mipnei kinyanim v'hamidos nischazku v'nisyashvu. Because the acquisitions and traits have become strengthened and settled. So he's not saying don't push it off because you might die. He's saying once you make it to old age, what happens to your midos? They're set. Yeah, they're formed already. And he says, "Imalos implicios, your good midos and your bad midos." Amar Chacham, and the wise man said, famous Mishlei pasuk, "Chanoch lanar al pidarko." Yeah. Yeah, good. Al pidarko, according to his way. And I think Chanoch here. Anyone know the difference between malamed and lachanech, like chinuch and limud? Yeah, educate is good for chinuch. People call it chinuch. It's really training is better. And I think that fits here because you're talking about midos. Gam kiyazkin, and also when he gets old, lo yasur mimena. He won't stray from it. He won't deviate from it. Yeah. Okay, so the question now is, where's the Rambam? How's the Rambam learning this different than Ovadim and Bartenura? Oops, sorry. Let's look back at this one. I'll just put this up here.
The last one.
Yeah.
It doesn't really seem like for a class. It seems like for a youth. Once you're like teaching your kids.
Yeah. Well, so what's interesting about this is that let me think about it for 1 second here. The pasuk in Mishlei is definitely for teaching your kids, right? I feel like this could apply to someone who is working on being a chassid, but they're working on it. They're already very far by the time that they're young, you know? And he's saying, so what's the let's put it in terms of the rationalizations here, right? So what is the person rationalizing here about working on themselves?
These are also for rationalizations.
I think so, but it might be when we refine the idea, we might come out differently.
not waiting.
Yeah, not waiting, but so he's saying I'll push it off. I'll wait. Okay. And what argument is Hill making according to the Rambam?
It gets more difficult to change yourself.
It gets more difficult as you go on, right? So I think that allows us to get a more sophisticated mistake. So in other words, what is the mistake? It's not that you won't have time later on, because he's saying you might have time later on.
Think that later on it will be just as
Yeah. So I think so the mistake is like this, and this is harder for you to understand right now because you are in your youth, you know, but I feel like if you talk to older people, like I'm kind of like, I guess, I don't know how old youth and old age is here, but I'm definitely not youth and I'm definitely not old age, you know, but if you talk to like older people, like in their 70s or whatever, you know, I think they'll agree with this is like, what happens is, I'll give you an example. Okay. When I talk to Popo, right, to my grandmother, who's 96, and I asked her on her last birthday, like, how do you feel? I don't feel 96. I still feel like I'm 70, you know? Or if you talk to like someone who just turned 70, they'll be like, I still feel like I'm in my 50s, you know? So the mistake is that you picture the self that you are right now being the same self all the way into the future. And you think to yourself like, well, right now I could change stuff. So if I decide to like put something on the back burner and to like work on this at some future time, it'll be just as easy then as it is now. And that's the mistake, is that it does not get easier. In fact, it gets harder to change stuff. So there's an urgency for why you shouldn't push stuff off to work on, you know, until like later. Now, I'm not saying you should work on everything right now because that's obviously not realistic, you know, and there's a time for working on certain things and a time for working on other stuff. But the mistake is you'll just keep on pushing it off thinking it's as easy. Now, you know, it's as easy then as it is now, and then you'll push it off too far. And by the time you actually want to work on it, you won't be able to change, you know? So I think that's the type of rationalization that the person is making is like, I'll work on it later, thinking that it's going to be as doable later as it is now, but it's really not. Let's go to the first part then. First part, I don't know if I understand as much. What do you think his points are here for the first and second thing?
I feel like this is just someone who misunderstands the purpose of like self-perfection.
Okay, go ahead. How so?
Because it seems like he
Okay, so let's actually, I think the way I learn it is you have to look at the second half in light of the first. So what point do you think he's making there? Like, why do you have to tell yourself that I'm the only one who can motivate myself? No one else can motivate me.
This way you don't rely on
Yeah, go ahead, Emily.
this way you don't rely on anyone else to change you.
Yeah.
Because if you're relying on someone else and you're on someone else
Okay,
Or
good.
it's like pushing it off. Like I'll wait till I hear the speech. In
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, so I think this is much more, I think some of you said this for the last one for this Rus thing, you know, I think this is kind of like waiting. I mean, I think that's a good example, right? Is like, I'll wait until I'm in seminary or whatever, like, and then they'll motivate me, you know, or like, I'll wait until like, you know, I have someone to like help me do this. But if you understand, I mean, it's very similar to what we said for the Ovadim Bartenura. It's just Ovadim Bartenura was focusing on the obtaining of zechus. This is talking about like the motivation to like work on yourself. You know, according to Rambam, the whole thing is about working on yourself, right? About like getting good midos. You know, and so no one is going to make you get good midos or of your mind or your emotions unless you do it yourself. So if you find yourself like saying, "I'll wait until I get someone to do it for me," that is a dangerous way of thinking. You know. Like, what's an example of this? Like, I mean, you guys are in a weird position right now because you're out of high school, but you're still in like a program, you know? But I think people, once they get out of a program, whether it's after seminary or after like college, there are people who like will wake up one morning and they'll realize like 5 years have gone by and like I haven't been learning, you know? Like if you don't, put yourself in a position where you are taking active actions to like keep yourself involved in developing a certain thing, no one's going to do it for you, you know? Now, in light of that, what do you think he means when he says, since it is in power to incline my soul, in my power to incline my soul to whichever side I want, what action have I done out of the good actions? It is as if he's diminishing himself, saying, what am I? In other words, what has come from me since I'm not perfect, even though I've done this matter? What like thought process is that depicting here?
Like, I don't know if this is the real fallacy, but
Yeah.
like all or nothing fallacy. Like, if I'm not, like, everything that I can do is not going to be perfect and like completely sufficient. So like, what's the point of even trying?
I see how you're reading that from this. I'm not inclined to take it that way because I don't think Peter Avos would be talking to someone like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So I'll give you one hint maybe is that the first thing is talking about going forward, right? If I want to change myself, I have to motivate myself. Okay. What benefit could you get from looking back on the changes you've made? What will you realize? Say again?
You'll be more motivated to change and you see that it has worked. So you'll do
Okay, you'll see it has worked, but he's putting emphasis on.
Doesn't. If you don't see the results, you'll be like,
Yeah. So in other words, like I think what he's saying is like, this is my understanding. You tell me if I'm forcing the reading or not. He's saying like this. So the first part is saying I have to work on myself if I want to get good virtues, good mitos, right? But then since it's in my ability, if I look back at what I have accomplished, how much is it? Not very much, which means how much work am I going to have to do if I want good mitos? A lot more. In other words, like if you realize, like it's kind of like, I don't know if you have this experience, but if you are either working on a paper or like trying to like, read a certain amount of reading assignment, like say you got a huge reading assignment for something and like, you feel like it's going great and you look at how much more you have to do or like how little you've gotten done in like the time that you've worked on it, it creates a sense of urgency. Like I better work much more, you know, because I thought I worked really hard and it only paid off a little bit. So like I'm saying that like I think it's using this not to discourage, but to create urgency. You know, like I look at how hard it has been to make change, and what about the future? What's going to happen in the future? According to the Rambam, it's only going to get harder.
like they're all connected.
They're all connected, yeah. So that's the line of reasoning here in the Rambam is on the one, I can't sit around waiting for something external to change me because I'm the only one who could change myself. And if I look back, what have I done with my life in the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever? I haven't really done much. And the time is only getting shorter and it's only going to get harder for me to change myself. So I better get my act together.
So So like the first is like you need to motivate yourself, and the second two are like how you should motivate yourself.
Yeah, it's perspectives to show why the urgency to motivate yourself should kick you into action right now. That I have not used the time I've been granted to work on myself in the last like however many years, and it's going to get harder as I go. So waiting is only going to make things worse for me. So this is something that I do think could apply at every stage of a person's development. Like this is good for the high schooler, and this is also good for the chassid, who like knows how much there is to work on, and has a much more realistic perspective there. I'm hearing a lot of silence today.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if it's silence of confusion, apathy, boredom, irrelevance, disagreement, randomness.
My brain's just scattered. I feel like.
Okay, that happens. Yeah, see, in high school, sometimes like I would be very like depressed because I would think that a class just didn't go over well. And then I would talk, no, sorry, when I'm teaching high school. And then I would talk to other teachers and they'd say like, yeah, that grade has just been in a bad mood today or something. I'm not saying you guys are in a bad mood, but I would realize like, I always just assume that that this was a flop, And so, but sometimes it has nothing to do, like I can't tell. That's, yeah. All right, so I think we can move on to another. You said you wanted to do the Mishnah and Pirkei Avos about Jewish music.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can do that maybe for next week, and then we'll do EO probably for Wednesday and Thursday. All righty. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Welcome.